Good evening everyone, welcome to the Planning and Highways Committee meeting today, the 31st of January. Firstly, a brief health and safety introduction. We're not expecting a fire drill, but if the alarms does sound, please make your way to the nearest fire exit. The emergency exit at the back of the chambers will take you across the roof and down the fire escape. Take care, as this may be slippery if wet. Or you can exit the way you enter the building through the police station and out the front or back door. If it is not possible to get to the exit, then the lift lobby is a safety zone in the event of a fire. Under no circumstances should the lift be used. Please make sure that all mobile phones and devices are switched off or on silent. Any individual wishing to video or audio record the meeting may do so. I must inform you that this meeting is being videoed by the Council and will be uploaded to the Council's YouTube channel. Please remember, anyone wishing to speak in the public participation part of the meeting should raise their hand and wait for me as the Chair to gesture you to speak. You will have a maximum of 4 minutes to make your representation, which should be aimed at me as Chair. Please state the agenda item which you will be speaking about. Through me as Chair, Council members or officers may then respond to your point if necessary. You will not automatically be able to reply unless I as Chair allow you to do so. Full public participation policy and other helpful policies are available. To all present, please remember to show respect to others in the meeting and avoid interrupting where possible to enable others to follow the meeting. Anyone present felt to be behaving unacceptably will be excluded from the meeting by the Chair. Any member of the public looking to leave the meeting should wait for the Council officer to escort them out of the building. Thank you. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence.
Thank you. There are apologies from Councillor Penny Lowe, who's on holiday, and Councillor Jim Lord and Councillor James Elton.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 2, disclosure of interest. To deal with any disclosure of members of indisclosable pecuniary interests and interests other than pecuniary interests as defined under the Seaford Town Council Code of Conduct and Localism Act 2011 in relation to the matters on the agenda. Councillor Honeyman.
LW 190010 Freecorn House. Just Mr. Grimbles, I'm a member of the Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group, so I'm a member of that as well. So I shan't take part in or vote against. I know it's a minor amendment, but nevertheless.
It's all right.
It's been approved.
It's been approved,
yeah,
right.
I'll mention later on that there's a bit of a problem with applications at the moment, which I'll mention later on. So there's no need to mention it because it's those sorts of applications are dealt with much quicker than the ordinary applications.
I was going to say, because if it's not material, so yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Okay.
So no other.
Anybody else?
No, I was going to just it's the same one.
Right.
Item 3, public participation. In accordance with Standing Order 3 and the Seaford Town Council policy, members of the public will be entitled to speak on general issues concerning this committee. On non-planning application matters at this point, people wishing to speak on planning applications may do so immediately before any planning application. Mr. Hill.
Could this be minuted as well, please? About the age concern, that's Gateway and all that in the Trellis. I'm going to write a formal complaint about it, and I would like the Town Council Committee here to think about also writing a complaint, because they voted against it in the first place. So I wonder if you could back me up.
Perhaps I can. I've updated Mr. Hill already on it because he's been raising it at each meeting with me informally. So I better update members as to what's happened. It's obviously not on the agenda, but it's an ongoing matter, and you'll recall
Mhm.
it was dealt with around that November. The decision of the officers, it was a delegated decision back in November, was that the gate could stay and the trellis should be removed, and that the gate should be painted to match the render of the building, so it didn't stand out as a natural wood gate, but it was, as far as possible, blended in with the building. And that had to be done by December the 12th, I think it was. We'd objected, I think, it was an objection on the basis it was out of character generally. The trellis was removed and the gate was painted in time, but apparently the enforcement officer has updated me, because I noted that the trellis had been reinstated, and Mr. Hill had raised it a number of times with me, so really on his behalf, as well as on behalf of the members, I queried it, and I was told by the enforcement officer that the Age UK had gone back to the officers to plead their case because people kept throwing sacks of donations, for want of a better word, over the gate and into their porch. And the trellis was originally intended to stop that, and they sort of pleaded for sympathy, and could Lewis tweak the decision and allow them to keep the trellis? And the officer apparently did sympathise with the problem, and therefore allowed the trellis to remain there, altered the original decision, which was just to retain the gate. And so that's the situation. The trellis hasn't been painted, either it's a new trellis or it's been put on the wrong way round, because it was originally painted and then removed. But I was waiting until tonight to update Mr. Hill to see what he wanted to do about it. Obviously, as a committee, we've put our objection in, and the decision has been dealt with, as I've mentioned. It's not on the agenda formally, so it may be that you want me to put it on the agenda for the next time, the next meeting, so that we can sort of consider it again and consider whether we want to make any further representations. It should really go on the agenda because Age UK should be aware that it's coming up. But that's the current situation. I think if you want me to put it on the agenda, I will. But you've obviously got to consider what Mr. Hill has said as well.
Thank you, Chairs. I think we should go on the agenda, partly because obviously being raised by members of the public, I think it's quite important. I know we don't really have enforcement officers per se, most of it is done by Lewis, but I think if the officer to go on now, I think we could do a bit more formal. If it gets to that stage in the next 3 weeks, maybe we should have it on there.
It is in a conservation area. It shouldn't be treated lightly.
Yeah.
I think the problem is that Age UK will say they're a charity and they haven't got the money to spend on a more appropriate enclosure.
Design,
So it's a question of weighing those two sides up, really. We did object in the first place because we wanted a better design, if possible. It turns out that perhaps they aren't able to do that, or they're not willing to do that. But I'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting, and then it be considered. But there's no reason why Mr. Hill can't submit or carry on a personal complaint himself as to the way it's been dealt with.
Could I just come back?
I'll do a brief report.
Yeah.
It was only half a trellis, now it's a full trellis now.
Oh, I see. So it's
So
obviously it's
it's
different.
more.
It's different.
And also, could I ask, was it someone at the main council meeting, or was it just the officers done it? Did you were on the committee at Lewis, aren't you?
It didn't go to Lewis Committee, did it? No.
Did it go?
It was
Well, it should have done really.
Well, most of the applications are dealt with
Well, I don't agree with
With the
that.
delegated powers. Even if the town council objects, they normally it would have been regarded as a minor application by the officers probably.
Yeah, well, if there's an objection, I would have thought from the council it should go on to the full committee, Lewis.
There's no reason why we can't
No,
make that point.
Yeah, it's, as I say, I know it is controversial in one aspect, but it's the real, which involve a lot of people, which normally go to committee at Lewis, rather than just, and as Jeff has said, it's delegated powers to the officers.
It's mostly applications for new housing, small to medium to large housing developments that go to committee.
Also, it's not Age UK, it's
Age concern.
concern.
Oh, I thought it was.
No,
Age
age concern.
Yeah,
That would do with the other.
yeah, Age UK is on the corner.
Oh, right.
It's a different organisation, actually, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is. It's a local one.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to say, what's the point of having a conservation area if the officers at Lewis totally ignore it?
Mm.
I think we should make that point as well.
Mm. Yeah, well, we can make those points at the next
Yeah.
meeting. Yeah. It's as long as if it's desperately urgent, it's there. It would be nice to deal with it now. Now it's been raised, but as I said, it should really go on the agenda so that everybody's aware in advance that it's going to be discussed. I don't think the shop is necessarily going to want to involve themselves in it, but they need to have an opportunity to do so if they want to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any more? Can we move on to item 4, planning applications? Week commencing now, isn't it? Week commencing the 30th of December 2018. LW/19/0001, very first planning application for 2019. 51 Headlands Avenue, and members of the public.
I don't want to ask any questions tonight. I don't know if the gentleman does or not. If not, you can go straight through.
Are you happy that we go? Are you happy we go straight through? Do
You want to ask any questions?
Yeah.
Anything?
Okay, so you're happy we go straight through? Yeah, thank you. 51 Headlands Avenue, so open to committee. Councillor
Yeah,
Brown.
it looks fine to me. It's a very big plot and there's plenty of room for the
Yeah.
extension.
I second that. That's absolutely
Yeah,
fine.
that's fine, yeah.
Thank you, and can I have a show of hands of
Yes,
supporting the
Thank you.
application? That's unanimous. LW/18/0923, 51 Stane Road. Now the second part, we've got LW/18/0814. That isn't invalid. That was invalid on receipt. So that second bit shouldn't be there.
0923 replaced 0814, and it's a listed building consent application, which wasn't obvious from the weekly list. It's just a listed building consent because it doesn't. It's a listed building. It doesn't require normally planning permission. This sort of work, but it does for a listed building.
Councillor Freeman.
I say support it because it's obviously repairs which need to be done, otherwise the house is going to collapse, isn't it? So I propose we support it.
Councillor Argent. Any other comments? So can I have a show of hands as supporting the application? Thank you. Planning application was week commencing on the 6th of January. We have LW/19/0017, which is 1B Hill Rise. There again, we don't need to, because it's a lawful development.
Yes,
What's common
it's an application for a lawful development certificate. It's just an application to the authority to certify whether it needs formal consent or whether it's permitted development. So it's a technical application. It's sort of symptomatic of a problem we've got at the moment with the the weekly list contains all assorted applications, only some of which need to be consulted on. And whereas before the officers used to weed these out and give us a sort of pruned list just of applications that we needed to comment on. Now every sort of application is thrown in, and there's a few other applications down in the list which where there's a similar problem. So with this one, there's no need to comment. It's a technical application as to whether the extension is of the proper size within the size limits. So it just be noted.
So as a point of order, I wonder why the old system was changed, because it was working very well.
Yes, it did work well because it's shortage of staff. We just used to cut and paste it in the applications we were notified of in the special. It's like a special list that was pruned from the weekly list on the internet, which contains all sorts of different applications like discharges of conditions, which we don't get involved in. If you want to submit the colour, the brick sample that you're going to use in the materials, you have to comply with the condition about agreement of materials, and that's a formal application which is given a formal reference, but we can't get involved in that. And there are others here that are similar, which I'll mention as we go through. And at the end of the meeting, I'll mention it again because I don't think it's not a question of making a complaint, but just representations as to whether they could go back to the original system of just letting us know which ones they wanted our comments on, rather than leaving us to sort out the wheat from the chaff, if you like, on the weekly list, because it is causing a bit of a problem.
Yeah, I think somebody's got to do the work, but I don't really see why it should be us.
Yes, exactly. Because yes, through you.
I did send me apologies, but I'm actually hearing that.
Yes, right.
Okay.
They're the ones that are actually asking us to, for our views. So they should be asking us for our views on these applications rather than just throwing the weekly list at us. So I want to make that point formally to them, but wanted to get your support for that. Yeah. Okay. So sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay.
Let's do that.
Right. We're on page 2, Councillor Lord.
Thank you.
We're on the next planning application is LW/19/0013 73 Lexton Road. Councillor Latham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At first, I was rather concerned about this because it's immediately opposite the school, Cravenhill School. But on inspection, I think actually it's a very tasteful improvement to the property, and so I'd like to support it.
Seconded. Thank you. Any other comments?
Yes, like Councillor Latham, I was initially concerned about the location, but there seems to be adequate provision for off-road parking, so no objections.
Right, so can I have a show of hands of supporting this application?
Thank you.
We've covered LW/19/0010, Dream the Corner House, which has been approved, decided and approved. So we go on to LW/19/0006, 6 Richmond Mews. Councillor Honeyman.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, obviously this one is a bit more central compared to the one we just talked about. So a lot of I'm a bit more disappointed about this one turning into open space. I don't think there's a lot we can do about it, but I mean, it's actually fine. But it's just where it is again, because it's literally just over there, over the way. But, yeah.
Just to come back on that, you do wonder about parking
I know.
in an environment like that, because Richmond Mews is very narrow.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's a very tasteful development that they're proposing, and I think will improve the property. So on balance, I think we should improve it. I'd support it.
If I can just come back quickly, yeah, I mean, I support it, but I mean, in a way, I doubt if it's been used as a garage even now, probably.
No,
There's a lot of them aren't, of course.
Can't turn in there, right?
It's probably been used since they used their garage as well.
Yeah.
These sort of conversions are usually permitted development unless there's a specific condition. I think probably the only reason it means an application is that it's a slight increase in the footprint of the house, as well as the conversion of the garage. And so it's probably a very marginal reason why it's not normally be permitted development. But I think it's just bringing the accommodation out of it. The garage is recessed. I'm not sure, but certainly they're usually permitted development. So,
Right, so can I have a show of hands of supporting this application?
Thank you.
LW stroke 19 stroke 0020 1 Links Close. Councillor Freeman.
Well, I found this application very confusing because in the existing plans, the garages are at the front. On the plans that were put into after this has been done, the garages are moved around the side. I couldn't really, as I was sort of looking at,
Yes,
it seems an odd shape.
it does. I mean, I agree with you. And sorry, Madam Chair.
That's all right.
I thought on the plans, the property looked, most times properties are symmetrical with the road or boundary fence, but this one is at an angle, and I wondered whether there had been a mistake actually in some of the drawings, because the garages, as you say. Having said that, it's a huge plot, and I've no objection to it in principle, but I just thought the plans and the application looked a bit
Totally
suspect.
confusing.
Yeah. So, it's difficult. I think it might be worth checking that the plans are correct in our approval. to do that.
I'll say that the members found the plans confusing and considered that they should be checked, but in principle it appeared that as it was a large plot and there was no objection to the proposals or something like that. So just to put in your concern about the clarity of plans.
Can I have the proposal and second to that?
Thank you.
Thank you. And can I have a show of hands, please? It's unanimous. LW stroke 18 stroke 1026 5 Keydale Road. Councillor Huntley.
So it talks about permitted development anyway, so
Well, I think it's just the loft conversion is permitted development.
yeah, so that's similar, so that's
But
fine. So
you usually
Yeah.
sort of describe the whole scheme, even if part of it is permitted.
but I'm happy with that. That's fine. Anyway, go on then.
Councillor
Thank
Latham.
you. I think there's a precedent next door.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number 5, I thought. So I think what they're proposing, it's at the back, isn't it? What they're proposing is almost identical. It's like a mirror image of next door. So I can't see there's any problem with it. It's a relatively small plot, having said that, I think. But,
The bottom end of
yeah. But no, I'm happy with it.
Okay, so, just and second.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so,
fine.
can I have a show of hands, please?
Thank you.
Thank you. LW stroke 18 stroke 1015 15 Alfriston Road, and I think this is another.
Yes, this is another example of a sort of rogue application getting into the weekly list. This is a bit more of a technical one. I had to do some research myself on this one. It's a new type of application. They're changing the rules all the time. It's slightly, because it's slightly more than the permitted development level for a rear extension, in the dimensions of it, it comes under a new rule which allows a householder in these circumstances, if it's slightly more than the established permitted development level, but only maybe sort of 10% increase up to a certain level, then you're allowed to use a fast track procedure You still submit the application, it still gets a reference, but it's a special fast-track procedure whereby only the neighbouring properties are consulted and only the neighbouring residents have the right to comment. And if they don't comment within 3 weeks, it's automatically approved. But if they do comment, then it's dealt with like a full application, or if they do object. So we don't have an input into the initial application. But as I say, it's another example of a sort of rogue application which doesn't need to be considered by us getting into the list. And so because the descriptions and the references are the same, it's very difficult to weed them out sometimes. So, just for noting really, we don't have an opportunity to comment, but it might come back, if there's an objection from the neighbour, it might come back as a full application.
Okay. OW/18/0867 6 Meads Road. Councillor Freeman.
It looks to be just the change of the window. Is that right?
Yes, it's because there was a condition on the original
Yeah.
07 consent that,
Okay.
that there should be no windows, no permitted development windows on a certain elevation, and they want a window on that elevation. So it's contrary to the condition, but obviously they're allowed to apply to have the condition relaxed. So it's relatively minor. And again, if it had been under the old regime where the applications were vetted, it might not even come to us because it might have been regarded as too much of a minor application to warrant our consideration. But as I say, which is, as I say, part of the ongoing problem that we've got. But anyway, you can consider it because we haven't been told not to.
If you're going to support the application, can I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Aiken. Seconded by Councillor Lord. And can I have a show of hands, please? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Planning applications, we commence in the 13th of January, 8 Darwell Drive. Councillor Green.
Again, another confusing application. It was very difficult to make out what they were doing.
I think it's just an infill.
Just an infill of a
Yeah,
corner of the
from the
back.
corner,
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
utility rooms,
Yeah,
everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's the block plan it indicated that. The other illustrations weren't clear, but block plan just showed it as an infill at the
Yeah,
back.
Yeah.
that's what confused me,
Mm.
detailed drawings. You couldn't see what exactly was being done.
Having said that,
I support it anyway.
Is that fine to second that? Thank you. And can I have a show of hands, please? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Planning applications weekend on the 20th of January, there was none. Then we go on to the South Downs National Park applications. SDNP/18/060078 St Andrew's Church, the Street, Bishopstone Village.
Where you go?
Councillor Freeman.
I would support it because I know myself, especially I've got mobility problems, and the handrail can only help people with mobility problems to access the church.
I would definitely support
Yeah,
it.
definitely.
I'm quite surprised they had to
Yeah.
take the application.
Yes, it's because of where it
Yes,
is.
I can see that, but handrail,
Yeah.
it's obvious.
To even have the footpath from the porch of the church
Really?
to the steps, it was a nightmare. It wasn't till the bishop fell over on the grass that we actually got it, that was a number of years ago, but it is because where it is, and yes, it's like at night time it will be. So can I have a show?
Could I say,
Yeah, sorry.
obviously it goes down the slope as well, doesn't it, too? When you go-
Mm.
Yes,
when you
it's
go-
just the.
It's just that, the bit from
Steps.
going out,
Yeah,
out,
the
out of the
steps,
church to the right, to, yeah,
Yeah.
basically down there.
Yeah.
Stand the steps.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so can I have a show of hands supporting the application? SDNP/18/06102 Middle House, Bishopstone Manor, Manor Yard, Bishopstone Village. Listed building applications. Councillor Latham?
So long as they're absolutely short, is a non-variable. These old buildings, most ones are load-bearing, and so I was rather surprised to see this, but I think it will improve it's for the kitchen, isn't it? And I think it will improve the kitchen no end. But just a little bit concerned. I'm sure they've got all the checks and balances in place. In which case I'll support it.
So if I second that? Thank you. And can I have a show of hands supporting the application? That's unanimous. Tree Works application TW-1H-0096-TPO 32 Seafield Close.
Notice in the details of this application, they do actually tag the tree, as we've suggested, aerial photographs, 2 aerial photographs with the tree tagged. And there could have been more, there could have been additional information, but there really isn't any need, I suppose, to add to that. There's not a lot of written material, but at least there's a clear plan and a tagged photo, which is encouraging because it's more than we've had on a lot of recent tree applications. But there is this ash problem at the moment, so it's one that we're going to get quite regularly, I think, similar applications.
Okay, any comments? Can I have a proposer and seconder if you're supporting the application? Thank you. And can I have a show of hands, please? Thank you. Make a comment on that would be quite useful, you know, we noted that.
Good supporting material. Clear supporting material.
Right, agenda item 5. To inform the committee of the current licence application for the proposed new road bridge at New Haven Harbour. It's just that you recommended to consider a report and forward any comments to the Marine Management Organisation.
This is yet another application to do with the Port Access Road. It's probably a formality. I think it's something which the county have neglected to do earlier, and they're just sort of clearing it up as an admin problem. But it has raised again concerns from quite a few people locally, understandably, as you know, not only involves New Haven, but certainly Bishopstone and a lot of Seaford overlooks the Tide Mills area. And it's an opportunity for us, we may not be able to thwart the application. Well, the deadline's tomorrow, and if we do object, which is consistent with our approach in the last few months to other similar applications, the objection will have to be considered along with all the others. But I think it's quite clear that this scheme was originally proposed at a time well before the national park was designated, before the Tide Mills area was included in the national park, and before there was a sort of appreciation, really, of the quality of the Tide Mills area and the need to preserve it, as well as the more distant views of the eastern end of the harbour. So it's another opportunity, if members agree, to express those concerns to another organisation. Whether it's successful or not, we'll see, but I think it's certainly in tune with the thoughts and concerns of a large number of members of the public in the Bishopstone area and generally. So I'll leave that with you.
So a query regarding marine licensing the site. Did anybody else have trouble getting into that site? I gave up in the end.
I did manage to get.
Did you?
I got it in there, I got it fine.
I just couldn't get into it
And
at all.
I
so
sort of
haven't
did
been able
read
to-
the report, It's quite a lengthy
Good.
report.
Can I say something about something, Chair?
Yeah.
I think, so the officer's right in the sense that they should have referred to the National Park and reports are not the area of that's a natural beauty anyway, which is, so you can tell right away it's an old document, so that should have been. If you go down there now, as you know, they're building, they're already doing preliminaries both sides of the port access road, and it has got overall planning permission, so, I mean, it's worth putting a comment in, that I think it's more of a correct, that really, it would have been the county council would have done that application.
Yeah.
They should have at least submitted out of consistency, they should have at least submitted an up-to-date, sort of at least gone through certain things, and
Yeah.
some things are out of date, but I don't think it, in a sense, turning it down, as it is a bit more of a formality by now at this stage, because unless it's got permission, so it's the whole
Yeah.
lot's got permission anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not really going to, I mean, I assume they also, do they clear the creek and everything, does it all that come under it, all part of the licence, do the developers do a bit of a tidy up and get rid of the supermarket trolleys and things like that?
Well, they have to if they're going to involve, if they're going to build the piers and everything. I suppose that's
Yeah.
involved. Yeah. As you say, we know that our role is limited in this
Yeah.
because it's a formality, but it's because there's been quite a bit of controversy in
Yeah.
the last few months with the local plan and everything.
That's right.
It's just we thought it was worth mentioning,
Absolutely.
and we could put a token. We could put a token comment that it appears that the application didn't take into account the national park and it still refers to the AONB,
Yeah.
and that although it may be a formality, the committee would still want to express its concern about the ecological impact on the Titan Reserve.
Yeah, do that,
Something
yeah.
like that. Yeah. It just sort of it's consistent with the concerns of the public, even though it might not make any progress.
Well, that's, sorry,
Yeah,
go on.
I suppose that you do exactly that.
Right.
I still support that.
Because there are a lot of people spending a lot of time opposing this, and I think they need to be supported.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there's going to be pole driving down there,
Yeah.
and it's going to
I think
disturb
so.
the wildlife, and I think they're going to sort of have some form of dam, temporary dam as well.
Beavers as well.
I don't know what the national
Beavers.
I don't know what the national park thinks of it all, because they're the people that have in a way been left out of all this. So they did object quite strongly to one of the earlier applications. But I mean, I don't know what their view is. They probably just have to shrug their shoulders and say, well, it's something that was decided a long time ago. But they appear to have been sort of elbowed out of the process.
Councillor Argent.
Well, I mean, I've got a different view as far as I'm concerned. Chide Mills is a brownfield site, and it always will be.
It's a historical site now. Councillor
I think as councillors, it's important to make these comments because it's in our interest. Residents are going to be talking to us about this when the work's really get underway, and it's much more comfortable if we can refer to the sort of comments that Jeff has kindly offered to submit.
At least, you say something, you feel you've done something,
Yeah.
but if you don't,
Yeah.
then you can't argue about it.
No.
Right, I've got the gist of that. So
Yeah,
Can I just come back quickly? I think it sort of acknowledges that we're aware that they need to act this licence and so on. It's a lot of acknowledgement we know what's going on effectively, isn't it? That's what we're trying to do at this stage.
So that we make comments about
Yeah.
it,
yeah,
not necessarily just wave it through.
we're aware of what's going on.
It's detrimental to the South Downs National Park area of Tide Mills. I mean, it's supposed to be a site of nature conservation importance down there,
Yeah, it's very nice. I walked around it the other day, and it's very nice down there.
which will disturb.
Right.
Okay, so can I have a proposal and a second, please? Thank you, Councillor Freeman, Councillor Latham, and can I have show of hands, please?
Thank you.
Unanimous, thank you. Agenda item 6, committee of the proposals by the National Park Authority for the erection of an entry sign on the A259, and you're asked to note the report.
I've given up hope of this ever coming forward because it was approved 18 months ago, and I just personally think it was time that the National Park put itself on the map as far as Steeple was concerned, and they did put some boundary signs up, because although it's obvious to local people where, you know, that they're entering a national park when you go over the hill and see the landscape opening out, you know, it needs to be identified. I think Seaford needs, it's good for Seaford to be identified as a national park town, even though it's, so I did actually email the South Downs National Park people, and they a few months ago, and they mentioned that, you know, it's still going forward. So now we've got the proof of that. I'm looking for the copy of the plan that we approved, the copy of the notice that was approved. It's a pretty modest notice. It's only about 1 metre high, and it's going to be in that sort of special robust material that looks like wood, but it's a sort of composite material. But I can't find the report. Ah, here we are. If you can see that. So it's about level with his waistline. So it just shows you the height. Yeah. It's obviously it's not. It's the original was in colour, but it's a sort of a browny, grainy composite material.
Reading one of these, you trip over it.
And it's
It's a woody finish.
it'll be. I've put Chington Road North. It's Chington Lane North, obviously, which you'll be aware of. But it'll be somewhere on that verge, which it's needed, I think, and it will be. I know there's probably too many signs around there, but it will be one that's needed, I think.
Councillor Labour.
Talking of signs, just for the record, this is one sign they do approve.
Thank you. So you're recommended to note the report. So noted?
It's just that you might have forgotten you approved it 18 months ago.
Agenda item 7, to inform the committee of the proposed road closures for the local events in March and July. So it's you're recommended to respond to Lewes District Council on the proposed road closure for the Italian market and the Tour of Sussex cycling event. If there's any comments, Councillor Honeyman?
Thank you, Chair. Just, go on. Do you want to go first?
Yes, I just say I'm the one that put in for the planning.
Okay. That's a declaration of interest.
Yeah.
On Tour of Sussex, yes, after the success of, well, last year's Tour of Sussex, at different venues, and also the Tour of Britain, what year was that? Can you remember anyone?
3 years ago.
Tour of Britain? 4 years ago, maybe.
Tour de France was about 1994, wasn't
They
it?
did a Tour of Britain, and he went along the seafront, didn't he?
Oh, did you?
Yeah, it came into a
Yeah,
few years, four years ago. I think, and also there's annual amateur triathlon goes along there, so they do close off in July anyway. So all things bearing, I think it'd be good publicity for the town, and it'd be an asset to that particular, for the town, and obviously for that particular event. And it's easy to close it off, relatively speaking. There's plenty of notice there, so I'm very happy to support it.
They originally wanted they originally applied for the other length of the from Dane Road westwards to Claremont Road.
Yeah.
But I got a late amendment to the application to cover the Esplanade rather than the Marine Parade.
Right.
So probably better in that area.
It's very wider roads, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that and the Italian market. If you want to take them together.
I mean, that's usually quite successful.
Good for some.
Right, so can I have a proposal and seconder that we're, thank you, and show of hands please. That's unanimous, thank you. Agenda item 8, to inform the committee of the LDC decisions. and we recommended to note the contents of the report, unless you've got any questions.
Just a couple there, and the appeal decision for the Holts, which is pretty straightforward. There's no great surprise in the decision. It's a very subjective sort of matter, and the inspector simply considered that the infilling wouldn't have the sufficient adverse impact to justify refusal. As I say, it's not a great policy matter. It's just a very subjective view of the inspector in that case. And just to mention, I did say earlier about the problems with the weekly list and the sort of assortment of applications that was appearing, and the fact that Lewis should really be doing the sorting out. Do you want? It's probably appropriate to mention it now. Do you want me to approach Lewis and try and sort things out? I mean, it's not going to be a sort of a complaint, more of a suggestion at this stage, to see. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Councillor Freeman.
Nick went into KNL Jewellers on Monday and he said there's been no work done on Talon Parade for the past 2 weeks.
Right.
For nearly 3
I
months.
suspected that. Very too cold. I'll approach Jennifer Baxter again.
Probably
Well, it's supposed to
waiting.
start by tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
I haven't heard of any sort of additional deadline.
Beginning
Oh,
of
first of
February.
all, what's the magic day then?
It's beginning of February, wasn't it?
Well, they've got a couple of applications in, or certainly one application for an amendment to the plans.
Yes.
You can check what's happened to them.
Oh yeah, of course.
But they might say that they're waiting for the plans to be amended before they carry on. But I think it's still worth raising a concern if you've had what you've heard, because we owe it to the residents and business tenants to follow it up.
Yeah.
I think with the shuttering around now, it's much more difficult to see what is going on.
Even if they know
And
that we're keeping an eye on them.
and I tried to look this
Yeah.
morning, but it's very difficult to see actually what's going on, but I concluded nothing.
Too quiet. You
Too
hear
quiet,
something.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past them to play a tape of banging and apparently. But no.
They've been in the radio station Fahrenheit this week and there's never been anybody.
No,
working
No,
on it.
I'll follow that up.
So
that's
can we note the report, note it?
No,
Yeah,
sure.
right.
Okay, and so declare the meeting closed at 7:48.
Yes.
Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you very